Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On a recent historic parliamentary visit to Israel with the Speaker of the House, I had the privilege of visiting Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Memorial. The place was teeming with visitors from school children, youth and elders from across the world coming to comprehend the incomprehensible. Through those black and white images, we gazed at faces with only moments to live, or those who had endured a purgatory between life and death, waiting for a salvation that never came. Arresting was the Book of Names, a book filled with tiny writing of those who died, their names and places of origin. Except this book was nearly the length of the room, with reams of blank pages. Why? For the known unknowns. Those stories continue to seep out from the pages of history through testimonials from survivors, allies, and upstanders around the world. The Children's Memorial is particularly poignant, dedicated to 2.5-year-old Uziel. It sits in a bunker-like structure, akin to a place children would hide in. As solemn as a tomb, but once inside, a glistening multiplicity of candles blink within mirrors, in homage to the 1.5 million children, some as old as half an hour. 1 in 3 children of those who remain unknown, but not forgotten in those flickers of light. Standing outside like a vanguard is a stylized version of a class photo, columns of varying heights but lopped at the top, symbolizing lives cut short, futures terminated. If you can't get to Yad Vashem, its digital collection is worth reviewing. But we also have a Melbourne Holocaust Museum with its equivalents in Sydney and a new centre in Brisbane, well worth a visit. How? Like a stone turning over in my hand, I kept asking this question on this tour. How did this happen? How could humans do this to their brothers and sisters? How was genocide committed under the nose of polite society, as ash rained down in neighbourhoods, casually swept from doorsteps? Manipulation, misinformation, disinformation, fear, threat, excuses, the weakening of public institutions, media censorship, demagoguery, dehumanization, experimentation, propaganda, scapegoating. These lessons from the past grab our shoulders, shaking us from our slumber, demanding that we pay attention. Never did I think I would see the Nazi symbols and salutes on our streets in Melbourne, in inner city suburbs, and indeed on the steps of our Victorian State Parliament. The rise of this movement has been alarming. It is repulsive to Australians, anti-Semitic, divisive, racist, a desecration of our values under the pretense of free speech. Free speech has its limits, especially when it threatens public safety, physical or psychological. Australia has a degree of social cohesion that is the envy of the world, but it has not happened by accident. It has been cultivated over decades because of waves of migration, a strong democracy, universal access to education, and opportunities for social mixing in our schools, workplaces, sporting teams. We can't and won't take the bonds between us for granted. This is why we in the Albanese government are taking action to further strengthen democracy and protect our community. This bill creates new offences for publicly displaying prohibited Nazi and terrorist organisation symbols or trading in their use. The trading offence targets selling, renting or leasing these paraphernalia. Both are associated with a maximum of 12 months imprisonment. Exempt are where a symbol is displayed for genuine religious worship, academic, artistic or scientific purposes. Importantly, the sacred swastika used in the Buddhist, Hindu or Jain religious observances would be exempt. Schedule 1 also amends the bill to criminalise performing the Nazi salute in a public place. This amendment is to address the significant harm to the Australian community caused by the representation of a gesture which is fundamentally incompatible with Australia's multicultural, democratic and inclusive society. And it is also a denouncement in very clear terms of anti-Semitism. Schedule 2 of the bill would criminalise the use of a carriage service for violent extremist material. A carriage service would include a range of platforms including web pages, social media, email, chat forums and text messages. This measure would allow law enforcement to take action against people who are using the internet to recruit, spread propaganda or incite violence. The offence is associated with up to 5 years imprisonment. We are not going to make it easy to radicalise young people. Early intervention with this provision also provides greater opportunity for rehabilitation and diversion. Schedule 3 of the bill criminalises instruction on how to perform an act of terrorism and praising the performance of a terrorist act when there is a risk that the praise would be enabling. Again, we want to prevent the radicalisation of young people. Preventing the glorification of terrorists or terrorist acts can lead to copycat behaviour if it is not dealt with. In recognising that advocating for terrorism can incite like-minded behaviour leading to widespread harm, we are increasing the maximum penalty for this offence also. Schedule 4 removes sunsetting requirements around the listing of terrorist organisations. Of the 29 terrorist organisations currently listed, the majority have been relisted multiple times, some as many as 8. This change will streamline matters. Appeals can be made to the AFP Minister if there is a case to delist an organisation. In addition, the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security would have the ability to conduct independent reviews regarding the appropriateness of these listings. There will always be divisive forces trying to pry us apart. Sexism, anti-Semitism, extremism, homophobia, racism are a toxic family that is not welcome at our table. To those involved in these activities, I urge you to return to the normal rhythms of your lives, to your sporting teams, faith groups, workmates and families. This flawed search for identity and belonging will take you to a spiritual dead end with buyer's remorse writ large. A buyer's remorse that is associated with criminal penalties and a moral debt that will reverberate throughout your lives, sweeping up your loved ones also. Make no mistake, the Albanese government will do whatever it takes to defend our social cohesion by tackling head-on anti-Semitic and terrorist symbols. Once associated with genocide, these are again emerging on our streets and suburbs. If people don't know why these are so offensive and destabilising, then they need to do their homework. Willful ignorance is not an excuse. Get educated using the plethora of online tools. That same digital platform that spreads hate should be a tool for enlightenment. The banning of these symbols will disrupt the marketplace of this extremist ideology. I commend this bill to